Hey everyone, welcome to Reading 21. We're going to be in Job 15 through 17 today, and I want to congratulate you if you've read along with us this far, 21 readings. You've done 3 weeks of days of Bible reading, and you've read the entirety of the book of Genesis. We're almost halfway through Job, and you've really accomplished something, right? And if you are a person who, up to this point in your life, have only read isolated chapters of the Bible or even isolated verses of the Bible, you're going to see this really start to bear fruit, okay? So I just want to say good job. Keep going. As a reminder, everything I say in these videos are my thoughts and my thoughts alone. They are not representative of any church body. So let's get into it. Job chapter 15. Eliphaz in chapter 15 rebukes Job for the things that Job has previously said in his responses. Eliphaz is charging Job with arrogance because in Eliphaz's opinion, he claims that Job thinks he knows more than him and his friends and also the elders, and therefore is rebuking wisdom, right? He is charging him with this arrogance because Eliphaz, thinking very linearly again, is older equals more wise. In general, that's true. It's not an absolute truth, though, right? He accuses Job of sin for speaking angrily to God. So he says, Job, you revoked the fear of the Lord, or you revoked reverence. Chapter 15, verse 4. In Alter's translation, so you thwart reverence. And this is the foundation of wisdom. I'll get to there a little bit later. Eliphaz gives us some original sin theology in 15:14 through 16. What is man that he can be pure? Again, Eliphaz asserts that what has happened to Job must be God's just punishment, retribution theology. And if that's the first time you're hearing those two words, you maybe want to back up a couple videos. I would like to point out here that we lose something by reading chronologically. All right, so again, Eliphaz is accusing Job of losing his reverence. The fear of the Lord, or reverence, is the foundation of wisdom. That is a major theme taught through the book of Proverbs. It comes up in many a proverb. So again, the one who fears the Lord must have blessing in their life. Fear of the Lord produces many good things. Many good things produce blessing. And the book of Job kind of counterbalances this. Remember, Job is a blameless and upright man before God, and the fear of the Lord right there is in chapter 1. And chronologically, these books aren't close to each other in our chronological Bible reading plan as they would be in the canonical, or the order that your normal Bible is in. So we don't, with them being farther apart, it's not as natural to kind of compare and contrast them and see how they're holding each other in tension, right? So I just want to point out that that's something that we kind of isn't as apparent. We don't have that as apparent in a chronological Bible reading plan, but there are many other benefits. And like Elijah and I said in week 0, we're going to do this canonically in the future as well. Eliphaz ends chapter 15, ends his speech by saying, the wicked get what they deserve. All right? Job's response is where I want to spend most of my time. And here I'm mostly reading from Alter's translation. And if you're not reading from that, I would be very shocked if anybody other than me was. That's totally okay. I'm just doing that here for a couple reasons. Job starts by saying, you have given me no unique advice. Chapter 16, verse 1. I have heard much of this sort. And he also says, you are wretched counselors. You are awful advice givers. You are bad friends. Wretched counselors are you all. He says, you were supposed to come here and comfort me, not judge me and tell me how awful of a sinner I am, and that how all of these things are my fault. You are wretched companions. We can all pretty clearly, just from reading, can figure that out. Let's jump into 16:6. So Job starts to complain to God. Whether Job in 16:6 he says, "Should I speak, my pain would not be held back. Should I desist, stop speaking, it would not go away from me." So Job's saying, whether I tell you my woes in prayer or I don't tell you my woes in prayer, my pain seems to remain the same. Have you ever felt that if you're listening to this video or listening to this podcast? God, whether I tell you my woes in prayer or whether I just sit silently in my pain, it doesn't seem to affect anything. Nothing seems to change. It seems to remain the same. If you have ever felt that, you have company in the Bible. Verse 11, God delivers me to a wrongdoer, lets me fall in the hands of the wicked. The identity of the wrongdoer here is a little bit debated. It doesn't matter. I was tranquil. He shook me to pieces, seized my nape and broke me apart. We're about to start getting some violent language for what Job thinks God has done to him. Set me up as a target for him. His archers, and your translation might say God, but the his here refers to God. God's archers gathered around me. He pierces my kidneys, pitiless. He spills my gall, my insides, to the ground. He breaches me, breach upon breach, rushes at me like a warrior. So he's saying, God has just attacked me, and this breach upon breach rushes at me like a warrior. The imagery the original audience is getting there is like, we have our wall of our city, our defenses. The walls have been breached, and now they're flooding in and starting to attack us. So there's serious pain here. Job is saying, God has set himself against me. That's how Job feels right now. And beginning in verse 15, we get just pure anguish lament. Sackcloth. So sackcloth is like mourning. It's like mourning and anguish. They would put on sackcloth. I sewed for my scabs. He's saying like mourning is sewed to my skin. And I thrust my horn in the dust. And listen to this. We can identify with this, a lot of us. My face was reddened from weeping, and on my eyelids, death's shadow. For no outrage I had done. Again, Job thinks he's in the right, and we know he is, and my prayer had been pure. And then starting in verse 18, we get this sudden, unexpected glimmer of hope, and we might have missed it. I kind of missed it at first. Earth, oh, do not cover my blood, and let there be no place for my scream. Okay, I'm not 100% sure what that means. But then when we get to 19, we get some clarity. Even now, he just talked about his mourning and pain and sackcloth sewed to his skin. Even now, in the heavens, my witness stands. One who vouches for me up above. My advocates, my companions, before God, my eye sheds tears. All right, so we get this unexpected glimmer of hope. And what I want us to get from that is there's real anguish. There's real pain here. This is not just some far off piece of literature. This is the human experience. All right? I've heard pastors who've experienced immense pain and suffering talk about the Psalms and identifying with the Psalms and how one moment after the tragic event has occurred, they're shouting praise. And then the next day, they're in pure lament and pure suffering. And if you've ever kind of felt deep anguish, deep pain, and that's been my experience too. The very thankfully, thank God, very few moments of my life that I've felt that, where for a few hours I was like, I'm better than I've ever been. And then a few hours later, I'm like, everything is awful. And that's just the turmoil that anguish is. And that experience is right here in the scriptures for us. As a reminder, we're going to get to the end of this book and Yahweh is going to speak. In chapter 17, once again, we turn to lament. complaint, hope from death, hope for death. This brutal, brutal cycle of lament and anguish and pain Job is going through. And my hope is as you continue to read the poetry in Job, you'll slow down, feel Job's pain, think about his laments, ponder on his laments, pray your way through his laments. Ponder, are they right? Has Job lost his reverence? Can you complain to God this way? Can I complain to God this way? And a lot of you are like, oh, I know the answer to that. Well, pretend you don't. Really think through it again. Think, is God listening to Job despite his current silence in the story? I've said a bunch of times now, Yahweh in the end is going to speak. Pretend you're Job and you don't know that. Empathize with this character and what he's going through, and think through that as you ponder through on the scriptures. I love y'all, and may the grace of the Lord Jesus Christ be with your spirit.